history of advocacy against shared parenting legislation. Shared parenting being a...
What's their position now today?
Their position now today is they still oppose it.
They oppose shared parenting?
They oppose any legislation that would impose a rebuttable presumption of shared parenting, right? Any kind of
Is shared parenting what it sounds like?
Shared parenting after divorce would be, 50-50, 60-40 custody time, right?
Sure.
This is going to be a quick video on European Union-sponsored feminism and feminism's attempts to block 50-50 parenting. So I stumbled upon this by reading a Guardian article called an article titled "Report Reveals Extensive Violence Against Women in the European Union." All links are in the description. And to show you just how dishonest the Guardian is, let me just read this for you. The report ranks countries in order depending on responses to the survey. In 3 countries often praised for their gender equality, for example, high numbers of women report suffering violence since the age of 15. In Denmark, 52%, Finland 47%, and Sweden 46% of women say they have suffered physical or sexual violence. Now, the reason I say that's dishonest is because it's basically lumped them together, physical and sexual violence, to make it sound like the European Union is is run by the Taliban or something. Anyway, I read the actual study, and I can't really critique it because you don't know if the study is honest or not. You don't know if the researchers have actually done what they set out to do, whether they've been honest, whether they've been impartial, which I seriously doubt, because if you look at the recommendations, I was expecting increased powers basically to stop domestic violence against women. A sort of vow, and sure enough, that's in the suggestion, albeit in different words. But I found something in particular which was a bit odd. I didn't really understand what it was, and it was it recommended increased funding for something called DAPHNE, DAPHNE. Now, I didn't know what this is, so I did a Google search, and what it is it's a European Union program which gives funding to certain groups to prevent domestic violence. In other words, feminist organizations, domestic violence shelters, etc. So I did a Google search for organizations that take funding from DAPHNE, and one of the organizations that I found was an organization called wavenetwork.org. Again, description in the low bar. And by their own admission, they're a feminist network, and they are political. They admit in the literature that they look to influence politicians, they believe in patriarchy theory, etc. Perhaps the most vile thing, though, is in one of the literature that they provide. It's called what do they call an editorial magazine. They fully admit that they are against 50-50 parenting because obviously men are obviously all men are commit domestic violence and are child abusers. Obviously, single parent mothers don't do that, but anyway. So I thought that would be I thought I would bring this to your attention. It's worth a read. It talks about the MRM as well, and how they see it as a threat. They see. I'll just get to the point in a minute. Okay, I found it. There are 3 reasons there are 3 reasons they speculate why there's men's rights movements. And the first group they lump us into are anti-feminists who still do not know the essence of feminism and are fighting against this term. The lack of education and low level of public awareness can be considered as one of those driving forces of anti-feminism. In other words, feminism is about equality, dumbass, basically. The second group, they say, is by fighting against feminists, some anti-feminists fight against all people which do not fit into the frames established by traditional society, including sexual minorities. Now, this is not true. The men's rights movement actually has quite a lot of homosexuals. I don't think the Justicer says he's an MRA, but he has defended the men's rights movement. So that's just plain wrong, as we all know. And the third group are radically minded people which are acting on behalf and in some cases with support of the Orthodox Church. They believe that feminism destroys traditional religious and national values. We can say that in the concrete case, religion is one of the driving forces of anti-feminism. Well, I think there is a bit of truth to that, but I think if you look at for instance, I did a video on Christina Hoff Sommers, and I guess you could claim that she's in this group, but I think but like I said, Christina Hoff Sommers is basically a sustainable feminist. So if there are traditionalists who say, well, this is not right, feminism needs to go, we need to scale it back a bit, the welfare state's too big, etc. It's only because they're thinking of tomorrow and they're thinking this is not sustainable, which is correct. Obviously all three can be debunked, as we all know. Anyway, in this pamphlet, whatever it's called, there's an article on the fathers' rights movements and anti-feminism by Barbara Stelmatzes from Austria. I don't know. Anyway, I'll just read one paragraph from her work. The troubling trend is that segments within the fathers' rights movement have, in a misguided fashion, accused feminists combating violence against women of waging a war against all fathers by painting all men as perpetrators. Such statements are clearly unfounded. Well, if you're using the word clearly, you need to put some evidence, otherwise clearly just substitutes for the fact that you don't have any evidence. But anyway, clearly unfounded, as feminists have only pointed to the fact that a significant majority of perpetrators of domestic violence are male, which is not true. A fact supported by international data, of course that's biased, and research available on domestic violence. Furthermore, the fathers' rights movement's attempts to institute equal parenting, custody laws that discriminate against the party initiating the divorce, discount the devastating effects such laws would have when a dissolution of family stems from domestic violence and where custody may be granted to a perpetrator of domestic violence. Look, we're not saying that it should be 50-50 all the time. We're saying it should be 50-50 by default. Obviously, if the parent, which could be a woman as well, who is abusing their child or abusing their partner, then obviously they should not have full custody of the kids or 50-50 custody. We're saying it should be the default. So obviously this is their agenda. I recommend you read it. So next time a feminist says they're not against 50-50 parenting, which I think was what Karen Strawhan said that they were against it in her recent conference. You can bring up this. It's quite a read. It's quite disgusting, but yeah, I find I bring it to your attention. This is what the European Union is funding. This group probably is funding the politicians themselves because they say themselves that they admit that they are political themselves. I read one of the citations from her rant, and it was basically a link to the Washington Post, which kind of brought me some hope. It's about a politician called Ken Cuccinelli, and he's basically he basically voted against increasing child support payments, and he's for 50-50 parenting, etc. And that's meant to be bad, apparently, according to the article the article that I just mentioned. There was a couple of sentences which kind of depressed me in this article, though. Again, link in the below bar. In a state with a stark gender gap on such issues, the McAuliffe campaign could target Cuccinelli's advocacy of fathers' rights to further depress his support amongst women. A recent Quinnipiac University poll showed McAuliffe with a 12-point lead over Cuccinelli among female voters. I think that just shows it. I mean, for instance, there's a group called Leading Women for Shared Parenting, and I think women say that 60% are in favour of 50-50 parenting. But first of all, 60% isn't a huge deal when you think about it. I mean, it shows that 40% don't want 50-50 parenting. And to be honest, I think that 60% that say that they do want 50-50 parenting don't actually want it in reality. I think if they could, they would put men as slaves for child support. Just if they couldn't afford to pay the child support, they would just make them as slaves. And as far as the 50-50 parenting, they don't want that. I mean, I don't think women truly want 50-50 parenting. I think they want to have the option of having sole custody. I don't think they're going to relinquish it very easily. That's just my opinion. I think that's very unfortunate, but I think I just think it's there's a long way to go. I really do. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you think. All references are in the low bar.